Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master. And if you follow the podcast, you have already probably heard me mention two or three times now that I have a lot of friends who live in California. I myself, at one point, almost moved to California and when the LA fires began back in January, I was heartbroken. I know a lot of people who lost their houses to the fires. I think it was a huge tragedy. And the thing is, they're talking about rebuilding Los Angeles in a very different way. And so I had the idea that moving forward, if our Los Angeles in the game is the way they rebuild it, right, then that would imply that these fires took place. If our Los Angeles in the game is like the old Los Angeles, even then we're implying that fires did not happen, right? So it's kind of no matter what we do, in one way, shape, or form, we had to address it. You know what I mean? And so I was very torn. I didn't want to do anything that was in poor taste. Um, so I reached out to the listeners, and you guys did a great job of giving me feedback. And the majority of people, about three-fourths of people, said that we should address it, right? So that is what this adventure is. It's two things, and that is one of them. The other thing, and this is more kind of lighthearted, the other thing is that one of our players named Brad, shout out to Brad if he's listening, he is putting together something that's like a really cool idea. It is this after school program that, if everything works out the way he thinks it is going to work out, it's going to be sponsored by the United Way. And there's a pizza place not too far away from where he and I live. And the idea is that every week on either a Thursday or a Friday, we don't really know yet, we would run the game there. And that these kids, and I'm not exactly sure on the age group yet, it might be high school kids, it might be junior high kids, it might be both. It's kind of too soon to tell. But these kids would play the game, and it would just give them something to do after school. It can be really good in terms of teaching things like teamwork and so on and so forth. So I'm actually really excited about this. But one of the things is a lot of parents, and obviously, your mileage may vary, everybody's different. Um, but I've sort of done some stuff like this before over the years. Um, I did a similar after school program in my hometown around 2006, 2007, something like that. And at any rate, some parents kind of don't care what their kids are doing. You know what I mean? And then there's other parents who are like really, really upset about violence and so on and so forth. And so that reminded me a lot of the parents groups in the 80s that did not want certain things happening on television. And so specifically with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, they made the foot soldiers robots. And that allowed the turtles, like say Raphael, who has a sai and he wants to stab an enemy with it, right? There's no way you could have done the level of violence that they had in the original 80s Turtles comic books, right? But when you make it a robot, all of a sudden you can get away with that stuff. You know what I mean? And then very similarly, I've mentioned a bunch of times on the podcast, I'm a huge fan of the 80s Transformers cartoon. And one reason why is in my humble opinion, they got away with more. You know what I mean? Because they were robots. So I had the idea then in this adventure that we should introduce a group of robotic villains. And if this after school thing does happen, then the parents would have less to complain about. You know what I mean? They would feel maybe a little better, that their kid is not playing Wolverine out there sticking his claws, you know what I mean? And in somebody's face instead, he's just blowing up a robot or something. So that was the other thing that this adventure dealt with. And so I decided that in order to facilitate that, I wanted to revisit an old module by Marvel Superheroes, which was made by TSR back in the 80s. And the module is called Breeder Bombs. And spoiler, at the end of the Breeder Bombs module, you find out that it seems like Magneto created the Breeder Bombs to turn humans into mutants. Um, and then at the very end, you find out it was not the real Magneto, that there was a robotic Magneto that had been created by Sentinels years earlier. In this Magneto, though, shared the motivation of the real Magneto of trying to create mutants. So he was the one trying to use the breeder bombs to create all these mutants and so on and so forth. And then his minions were robot versions of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And I had always thought that was kind of cool. The only time I ever saw those characters was in that old RPG adventure. And then in the end, they seem to be destroyed, and you just never see them again. And you know, but one of the things they mentioned during the adventure was that Magneto had self-repair circuits. So I came up with the idea then for this game session that we would revisit the breeder bombs idea, and that in the cave where those adventurers had left the remains of the Magneto robot, over the years it was slowly repairing itself, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into the game, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. We have a genuinely awesome community here, and that's thanks to you guys. So thank you so much for being here. I know there's a million other things you could be doing right now, and you're listening to me instead, and that means the world to me. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Seriously. So, all that said, let's dive into it. The prologue to this one takes place in January of 2025 as the sensors of the robotic Magneto flicker to life in that cold, desolate cave deep in the Andes Mountains of Chile. The old robot's metallic frame was a tangled wreck of rusted parts and broken circuits. His memory banks stirred, still haunted by the remnants of the breeder bomb's mission and his motivation to bring about a world of mutants. But his directives were hazy and faded from years of dormancy. Magnetic fields swirled around him, and his sensors hummed as they traced the faintest bits of electromagnetic energy. For a moment, there was silence. Then a beacon of energy called to him from the north, and he recognized it as a fusion reactor. Without hesitation, he began his long trek, tearing through the mountains of South America. His limbs were sluggish at first, but became more fluid with each passing day as he gathered power. By the time he crossed into the United States, his senses were alive again and his mind was sharp. The closer he got, the stronger the electromagnetic signature became. Soon, He stood at the entrance to Pacific Park, an amusement park built on top of a labyrinth known as the West Coast Murder World. The magnetic powers of the Magneto robot surged. Beneath him, buried deep under the concrete, was a treasure trove of power, power that he could harness and manipulate. The false Magneto's hand reached out. The metal beneath him was bent and cracked as he ripped open the sealed access to the old Murder World facility. He slowly glided down inside, and the flickering lights of the once grand facility came to life after years of being dormant. Immediately, he sensed the robotic guardians within, Arcade's robotic duplicates of the Avengers, their forms concealed behind layers of steel and circuitry. They were activated by the security system, and they attacked the intruder, but were no match for him. With a violent gesture, the Magnetobot's magnetic field whipped around the room, sending shockwaves through the facility. He ripped the robotic Iron Man's limbs from his body, sending them flying through the air with a violent crack. Captain America's shield, a symbol of resistance, was flung across the room like a tin can. The robotic Thor's armor cracked open as his body was torn apart, his systems unable to withstand Magnetobot's fury. One by one, the false Avengers' robotic forms were shredded by the onslaught of magnetic force, their pieces scattered like broken toys across a cold steel floor. Magnetobot approached the central command hub, his senses focused on the vast electromagnetic field surrounding the base. He extended a metallic hand, tapping into the systems with his ability to control and reprogram them. With a surge of magnetic power, the base's computers flickered on, responsive only to his will. Rebuild me, he commanded, his voice an empty metallic growl. He poured power into the machines, feeling them respond to his will. The lights in the lab hummed to life, machines whirring and clicking as they began their work. A new body was forged for him, stronger, faster, and more durable than ever before. Once repaired, the Magnetobot stood tall. His form now looked more organic and more menacing. His magnetic powers coursed through him like an unstoppable current, but that wasn't enough. Not yet. His mission was only beginning. He turned to the computers again, issuing new commands. Build the masters of evil, he ordered. And with that, the base began to churn out robots, each a perfect recreation of the world's mightiest villains. They were his new army, all crafted from the technology of Murder World. With them at his command, he would bring the world to its knees. Meanwhile, high above the Earth, an aging Stane International satellite whirred to life. Deep within Murder World, the newly constructed Ironmonger robot, infused with the memories and cunning of Obadiah Stane, watched as the satellite's targeting systems locked onto California. With a single command, a blinding orbital laser lanced down from the heavens, turning the whole area into a war zone. Panic spread, infrastructure collapsed, and the emergency systems were overloaded. But this was not destruction for destruction's sake. This was a cleansing. The weak, chaotic human city had no place in the Magnetobot's vision of the future. And this was just the first step. When the smoke cleared, the survivors would have no choice but to evolve or perish. Which brings us to the main plot. The West Coast Avengers are alerted to the spreading fires in Orange County. So Captain Marvel, Giant Man, Hulk, Iron Man, Ms. Marvel, Namor, Quasar, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, She-Hulk, Thunderstrike, Vision, War Machine, and Wonder Man work to put out fires, both literal and figurative. High above the skyline, Iron Man rockets through the smoke. As he does, another searing red beam lanced down from orbit, igniting an entire city block near the coast. Tony Stark gritted his teeth. Didn't anyone tell you? Unauthorized orbital strikes are a pretty big HOA violation. He locked onto the source, a satellite in low Earth orbit, its reflective surface flashing against the atmosphere. As he ascended past the cloud cover, his HUD zoomed in and his stomach twisted. The logo emblazoned on the side was unmistakable: Stane International. Of course, he muttered, clenching his fists. Even dead, Obadiah Stane still finds a way to be a massive pain. The satellite's targeting systems whirred, locking onto Iron Man. Oh, that's cute, Tony said, dodging a pulse of energy that sizzled past him. This wasn't just a rogue Stark Tech knockoff. This was Stane's work. The design, the security encryption, it all screamed of Obadiah Stane's paranoia and militaristic excess. But how was it active? No time for answers. Iron Man fired a pair of repulsor blasts, but the satellite's shielding absorbed the attack. Figures, he grumbled. The only way to stop this thing was to tear it apart with his own hands. Gritting his teeth, he accelerated forward, dodging another pulse of energy and driving his metallic gauntlets straight into the satellite's casing. Sparks erupted as he ripped open its hull, exposing its core systems. Let's see how you like a little manual override, he muttered, jamming his fist inside and overloading the system with a directed energy surge. The satellite flickered, shuddered, and its targeting grid went dark. Iron Man's voice crackled over the Avengers comm system, urgency cutting through the chaos. Heads up, team. Someone hijacked an old Stane International satellite and turned it into an orbital flamethrower. Down below, the West Coast Avengers fought a losing battle against the raging inferno. The Hulk swatted aside collapsing trees like matchsticks, while Giant Man stomped out blazes with sheer brute force. War Machine hovered overhead, unloading fire suppression foam, but barely making a dent. Quicksilver streaked from street to street, evacuating civilians, while Namor ripped the cap off of a fire hydrant, expecting a jet of water, but he was only met with the dry gasp of air. Meanwhile, Captain Marvel's cosmic senses tingled. There was a rippling pulse of energy emanating from the heart of the fires, one that felt wrong. Something more than flames, something even more dangerous. He focused, using his heightened awareness to zoom in on the source, isolating a specific location, a chemical plant near the coast, an old facility by the name of Air Products and Chemicals. The radiation levels there were spiking, and unbeknownst to our heroes, Murder World had created a robotic version of a classic Marvel villain called Radioactive Man. The robot Magneto from the Breeder Bomb's adventures sent Radioactive Man there to spread a toxic wave that could mutate anything in his path, just like the Breeder Bombs were designed to do. As such, Marvel took to the sky, the air crackling with cosmic energy as he sped towards the plant, his senses guiding him like a beacon. As he landed amidst the crumbling concrete and abandoned warehouses of the facility, his cosmic awareness alerted him to the danger should Radioactive Man succeed. So Marvel does a superhero landing near the villain, and he looks up with determination in his eyes. Your time is up, machine. he stated, his hands glowing with cosmic energy as he prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The robotic radioactive man stood amidst the wreckage, his metal frame glowing ominously. The battle erupted in a flash of searing energy as Captain Marvell unleashed a full force of cosmic blasts aiming to disable the radioactive menace before it could release even more of its toxic radiation into the atmosphere. Murder World's robotic radioactive man blasts his opponent again. As the radioactive blast crashes into Marvell, his body is racked with the force of the attack. The cosmic hero staggers back, his energy flaring in bursts, his endurance strained under the weight of the blast. You're going to have to do better than that, Marvell grunts through clenched teeth, shaking off the effects. With an effort, he launches into a devastating strike with his incredible strength. But the robotic menace isn't so easily toppled. The radioactive man absorbs the blow with ease, his unearthly endurance allowing him to shrug off the hit like a mild inconvenience. He retaliates, a concentrated wave of radioactive energy surging from his mechanical hands, slamming into Marvell's side. The explosion of energy chips away at the hero's hit points, leaving him winded and disoriented. Marvell stumbles back, feeling the pressure mount. This battle was quickly turning in favor of the robotic villain. Then, with a thunderous roar, the ground shakes beneath Marvell's feet. The Hulk lands with a seismic impact, his massive form towering over the radioactive threat. His eyes blaze with rage as he zeroes in on the metallic abomination. Hulk smash! The Hulk roars, swinging with all the force of his Class 1000 strength can muster. His punch lands with the weight of 100 wrecking balls, sending the robot radioactive man crashing into a nearby concrete pillar. The mechanical villain staggers, but it's clear that the Hulk's strike has shaken him to his core. Radioactive Man attempts to retaliate, unleashing another burst of radioactive energy, but the Hulk, impervious to radiation, simply flexes his muscles in defiance. The blast has no effect, dissipating harmlessly against the Hulk's immense durability. Radioactive Man stumbles backwards, his eyes flashing with recognition. He just realized that facing off against both Marvell and the Hulk may have been the biggest mistake. The tables were turning fast, and he could feel the grip of defeat starting to close in around him. The radioactive man robot, his form sputters as it attempts to recalibrate, but the Hulk's punishing blows have left the villain's circuits struggling to keep up. His internal systems flash warnings, but he can't process the overwhelming damage fast enough. With a quick calculation, he decides to retreat, at least for the moment. You're not getting away that easy, Marvell says, his cosmic energy surging around him as he closes the distance, his body surrounded by the telltale cosmic aura. He launches himself into the air, aiming directly for the radioactive man's exposed back. But the robot radioactive man isn't quite finished yet. As Marvell nears, his arms snap up, sending a desperate wave of radioactive energy directly towards him. The attack hits Marvell square in the chest, knocking him off course, sending him spiraling to the ground. He slams into the earth with a brutal crash, but before he can react, the Hulk is already there, pouncing on the robotic villain with a roar that shakes the air. Hulk smash Metal Man! The Hulk raises his fists high and brings them down on Radioactive Man with the force of a collapsing building. This time, there's no resistance. His massive strength crushes through the villain's armor, and the robot's body crumples under the Hulk's fury. Sparks fly, and parts of the Radioactive Man's mechanical frame explode in a shower of metal and glowing green energy. The robotic villain groans, now little more than a heap of malfunctioning circuits and shattered parts, but he's not done yet. With what little strength remains, he fires one last blast. The Hulk simply grins, shaking off the pulse like it's nothing. Hulk seizes the opportunity. His eyes lock onto the robot's barely functioning frame, and with a primal roar, he brings his fists down with a fury that would shake the heavens. His fists slam into the villain's chest, tearing through the metal with bone shaking force. Sparks and molten fragments fly, but the Hulk does not stop. He's not thinking, he's not calculating, he's just smashing. His massive fists hit with relentless fury, each blow stronger than the last, like a furious gorilla pounding at its prey. A fist hits the robot's face and the metal splits, the air filling with the screech of tortured alloy. The Hulk doesn't seem to care that the robot's not even fighting back anymore. His mind is a blur of rage, and it only takes another blow for the entire left arm of the robotic villain to shatter like glass. One more mighty swing, and the radioactive man's body crumples under the weight of the Hulk's fury. Metal and wiring spill out from the cracks in the robot's chest, and the villain is now little more than a mangled wreck beneath Hulk's fists. With one final growl, Hulk lifts the robot's remains over his head, roaring into the air before slamming into the ground with an earth shattering boom. The once fearsome robot is now nothing but scrap metal beneath the Hulk's overwhelming strength. Hulk stands over the ruins, chest heaving, looking down on the wreckage with a satisfied primal growl. He lets out a low grunt as if to say, "This is what happens when you mess with me." "Not so tough when you're facing us, huh?" Marvell quips, his voice strained but confident. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before messing with the Avengers." The Hulk lets out a deep, satisfied grunt. "Hulk smash good." Marvell surveys the wreckage of the robotic radioactive man, then glances at the Hulk, who's still panting heavily from the relentless pounding. The strained sigh, Marvell says, "All right, that's one less problem. Let's catch up with the others and see what we've got left to handle." Which brings us to the epilogue of this game session. The battle winds down and Quasar's quantum bands glow as he focuses. A surge of golden energy blasts from his cosmic wrist bracers, and he fires, ra- and the fires raging through the city begin to dissipate, smothered by yellow force field like constructs. One by one, he forms giant domes of energy that stretch across the flames, sucking out the oxygen and quenching them. Within a few hours, the worst of the fires are under control. Iron Man touches down, his suit gleaming despite the chaos around them. He takes a quick scan of the scene, his optics flickering as he surveys the damage, making sure no lingering threats are present. "All right, team, we've put out the fires literally and figuratively, but now we need answers." The Avengers regroup around Tony, their exhaustion evident in their expressions. Stark's helmet opens, revealing his furrowed brow. The radioactivity and the attack on the chemical plant, there's no coincidence there. Someone's trying to push us in a certain direction. Quicksilver scowls, crossing his arms. "All of this was too precise," he says. "Someone's pulling strings." Iron Man nods. "Right. We need to find out who, and fast." He taps his comm system. "Steve, Clint, Nat, Chala, Bobby, you all need to check in. We've got another Murder World problem, and I need you to take a look at Coney Island." The voice of Captain America crackles through the speaker system. "We're on it, Tony. We'll get to the bottom of this." And so, Captain America leads the East Coast Avengers through the familiar streets of New York City to Coney Island. They go to the old D&D ride and down through the access tunnels to the original East Coast Murder World. Its ominous underground passageways are now a quiet relic of past battles. Since the Avengers turned it into a headquarters a decade and a half ago, the place has been cleared of its deadly traps, leaving only an empty shell of what it once was. Bobby, Clint, Nat, Steve, and T'Challa walk the grounds, their eyes scanning every corner for any sign of trouble, but they find none. They split up, and Steve signals for the team to check in, ensuring nothing is amiss. After a thorough inspection, they confirm that the New York Murder World is completely inactive. a hollow monument to a forgotten chapter. Steve taps the comm. Tony, it's Steve. Coney Island is secure. No signs of any new activity. Whatever's going on, it's not coming from here. As the comms go silent, Tony looks over at the West Coast Avengers. Iron Man thinks out loud. How could a Murder World robot have not come from Murder World? Marvel exchanges a glance with the others. Because there's more than one Murder World? Iron Man rubs his chin, deep in thought. Could be. We've seen stranger things. If there is another one out there, it could be hiding anywhere. Tony stands tall, his face stern. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. As the Avengers lend a hand to those in need and play cleanup, Tony's mind races with possibilities. If there is more than one Murder World, the Avengers may very well have their hands full for the foreseeable future. Elsewhere, the remnants of Pacific Park lay smoldering in the distance, the twisted remains of roller coasters and game booths jutting out from the ashen landscape. The air hangs heavy with smoke, and the bright colors of the once thriving amusement park are now dull, as if swallowed by chaos. But beneath this devastation lies something far darker, a secret hidden deep in the earth. A path leads down through an underground network of tunnels, veiled in shadows, to the heart of the West Coast murder world. Here, the hum of machinery fills the cavernous space. A vast, sterile lab stretches out, glowing under artificial light. The clanking of metal reverberates off the cold walls as robots and machines work tirelessly, assembling another deadly creation. In the center of it all stands the Magnetobot, his metallic frame casting a long shadow across the lab floor. His cold, artificial eyes observe the mechanical assembly of a new radioactive man robot, the latest in a growing army of war machines. With but a thought, he commands the machinery, seamlessly assembling new robots with an efficiency that would be terrifying to any who understood its implications. Magnetobot's gaze lingers on the unfinished radioactive man, his mind already calculating his next steps. Soon these creations will be his enforcers, his soldiers in the war he intends to wage against humanity. This underground empire is only beginning to take shape, but Magnetobot knows it won't be long before it's unstoppable. And when the time comes, he will unleash the army on the world, reshaping it in his image one robot at a time. Any human who dares stand in his way will be eliminating just as easily as the machines around him. The conquest is inevitable. And that was it for this game session. We hope that you enjoyed hearing about it. If so, as always, we would love it if you took a moment of your time to smash that like button. Check to make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube loves to unsubscribe you and not tell you. And last but not least, leave us a comment. And from everyone here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure.